If you've recently experienced loss, it's important to remember you don't need to make all the decisions right away. Today, I'll share 5 of the most common financial mistakes widows make and how to avoid them. If you find this helpful, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Now let's move on to the 5 mistakes that widows can commonly make. Number 1, rushing major financial decisions. Let's think about some of the reasons it can happen. Grief is a difficult emotion. It can make you feel pressure to take action, to want to move on, to want a fresh start. And the other thing that can happen is that you might have proceeds from insurance or something like that, and others can pressure you to maybe buy an annuity contract or some other type of financial product that you don't need and it's expensive. But they know that you're vulnerable and they want to take advantage of you. So you want to avoid things like that. Generally, you want to avoid making major financial decisions too quickly. You need to allow yourself time to grieve and time to kind of think about and confront the new reality that you have. You've been with the person you were married to for years, potentially, and now they're not there. And maybe they were taking care of the finances too, and you don't even know a lot about finance. And so you have a lot of uncertainty. So you want to make sure that you find somebody that you can work with, that you can trust, that will have your best interests at heart. Some of the consequences of making major financial decisions too quickly can include regret. It can disrupt stability, and it can cause you to lose assets because you buy things you don't need or overpay for things. So what's the solution? Give yourself the permission to pause. Focus on your immediate needs first. Wait until later to make the major decisions. So when we think about what are some of those things that you want to focus on immediately, you want to make sure that the bills and things like that have to be paid, you have put in a mechanism to pay those. You want to make sure that you have copies of death certificates and things like that, because you're going to need a lot of those as you communicate with different financial institutions and other parties. But just focus on your immediate needs first and keep the major decisions. You want to save them for later. Switching from saving major decisions for later, let's move on to mistake number 2, overspending in the grieving phase. How can this happen? Emotions can really impact the way we think about and act with money. We can schedule travel, vacations to get away, to escape. We can make big purchases, or we could give too much to our kids or our family because, especially with our kids, we know that they're hurting too, but we want to keep the bigger picture in mind and not overspend while we're going through that grieving phase. Just spending money isn't going to get rid of the hurt. That's why it can often happen is we're trying to fill the void or avoid pain, but in the end, that may not provide much value. And the consequence can be that we can accumulate debt or we can drain our savings. And neither one of those is a good outcome, because we want to make sure that you're okay over the long term. It's not just the short term that matters. You want to have the long term in mind. So one solution is we can think about creating a short-term spending plan that has guardrails on it so that we don't exceed too much what we should be spending. So here's a great tip. Set aside a small budget for things that bring you comfort and protect the rest. And when you're thinking about protecting the rest, that doesn't mean you have to invest it all. It doesn't mean that you put it all in the bank. You want to find a good mix, but you want to make sure that you do keep available what you're going to need over the near term, because if we get back to the idea of rushing major financial decisions, if we make big financial decisions or if we invest too soon, we could put ourselves into a bad position because the market doesn't always go up. And what if we need that money? So you want to think about that too. But the bottom line here is that we're really trying to not overspend in that grieving phase and use spending as a way to try to deal with the emotional pain that we're feeling. So setting aside a small budget for things that bring you comfort and protecting the rest can be a really good strategy to employ. Emotional spending can lead us to spend too much. One of the ways that can happen is that we can be pressured by others. It could be friends, it could be family, it could even be salespeople who are pushing financial decisions. Maybe they know that you have some insurance proceeds coming in and they kind of want to figure out how they can benefit. So they try to get you to use that money, or they ask you if they could borrow some. But you have to make sure that you don't succumb to that pressure and you do what's best for you. Also want to avoid investing in, like I said, something risky or lending money or even being convinced to co-sign, because all those things can lead to loss. And we want to keep the big picture in mind at all times. And in addition to loss, the consequences of spending this money that we really didn't need to spend because of pressure we got from others is that we can cause financial strain and damaged relationships. What's the solution to this? Learn the art of saying, I need more time to think about that. Don't rush into the decision. Take time to gather information and make an informed decision that's best for you. And this is one of the main reasons to consider having a trusted advisor or a neutral third party to talk to and go over your decisions with. You don't have to do it alone. So the mistakes we talked about so far dealt more with the near term and the mistakes that we can make that have a more immediate impact. Let's move on now to mistake number 4, which is neglecting long-term financial planning. Oftentimes widows focus only on their immediate bills, or they act in survival mode. But you want to keep the long-term in mind. You want to take a long-term approach with your investments. I know that with the emotions that you're going through, you're scared. You don't want to take unnecessary risk, and you're worried about whether or not you might have enough to make it. But if we don't take a long-term approach with at least some of our investments, and again, you don't have to do this right away, but you do want to think about this from a long-term perspective. If we don't take a long-term approach and invest in stocks and not just keep all our money in the bank, in the end, we're going to lose out because inflation is going to hamper the value of our money. It's going to make it worth less. And if you think about what a cup of coffee used to cost versus what it costs now, it's the same cup of coffee. I'm not talking about the fancy kinds. I'm just talking about like a basic cup of coffee. It's a lot more money than it used to be. That's because of inflation. And one of the ways that we protect ourselves for the long term is that we invest in things that give us the potential for growth. Because right, that's the biggest, one of the dangers that we face if we don't consider the long term in our planning. We can miss out on investment growth, which can give us retirement security. And the other thing we want to think about as part of this process is to update our estate planning. Right? If your spouse passes, you want to update the beneficiaries on your account. So think about who you might want to have there to inherit, if you have kids, grandchildren, whoever the case may be, but you want to make sure that you prepare for that too. And some of the key areas often overlooked is what I just said, is updating beneficiaries. You want to update the beneficiaries not just on your financial accounts, but also your life insurance. You want to make sure that you understand what your Social Security options are. In general, if your spouse passes and their Social Security benefit was more than yours, you're going to take over their benefit. That's assuming that your spouse was old enough to already be collecting benefits, but you want to understand what your options are. And if you're younger and you have kids, if your kids are under the age of 18, not only can you get a benefit potentially, but so can your kids. So you want to understand how that works too. And then you want to think about if you need any wills or trusts to make, well, you want to update your will, right? Because your spouse is no longer part of the picture. But if you have trusts, you want to update those. If you didn't have trusts, you want to decide if you need them going forward. So when we think about the solution here, we want to start with a simple financial roadmap that includes our income, our expenses, and our goals for the next 5 to 10 years. And one of the decisions that we want to consider when we're thinking about long-term financial planning is the home that we lived in before our spouse passed. Can you still afford it? Do you still want to live there? What are the tax consequences of selling? If you sell within the first 2 years after your spouse passed, you can exclude more gains than if you wait. That doesn't mean that the proverbial tax tail has to wag the dog, but you want to take that into consideration and know what the implications might be. I know there's a widow that I'm working with, and her spouse in January, it'll be 2 years. And initially, we thought she had to sell because we didn't think that she could afford it, and she was going to move into continuing care retirement community. And then she inherited some money from her deceased husband's estate, and so that put her in a better financial position. And now she's dealing with her own health issues. So we know that if she doesn't sell by January, she'll pay more taxes. But right now is not a good time for her to move because she's got to deal with her own health. So those are the type of considerations. And if you have kids, you have to think about, if we move, do they have to change schools? But again, you don't want to just stay in the home without understanding what the long-term implications are. So that's why we want to have this financial roadmap and our goals for the next 5 to 10 years in place to help make sure that we do consider long-term financial planning. As you're thinking about making decisions around your home, we move on to mistake number 5. It's not building a support team. First of all, we don't all know every answer. And when it comes to finances, in a lot of ways, it's like medicine. If you're sick, you go to a doctor because they've been trained to help you when you're sick. If you have questions about your finances, you go to a financial advisor because a good financial advisor has been trained to help you manage your finances. You might go to an estate attorney because you need to update your will. You might hire a CPA because they can help you with your taxes. I say all these things because being in isolation makes the decision so much harder. Without support, you're relying on chance, maybe advice that maybe isn't that great, cause you to make reactive choices. And the other thing that's really important here as part of the solution beyond the members of your team or part of your team, but just not a professional, is having supportive friends or family. All those things really matter. Having that financial advisor, having an estate attorney, having a CPA, having supportive friends and family, all those things are going to help you get through this. Just remember, you don't have to do this alone. So let's recap the key mistakes. Number 1, don't rush your decisions. Take your time. Don't hurry into things. Number 2, want to be careful about overspending, about exceeding your whatever guardrails you have on your spending. You don't want to spend too much because of the long-term implication it can have. Number 3, don't let yourself be pressured by others to make decisions that you're not ready for. We don't need to hurry into very many things. Number 4, we want to remember to keep the long term in mind. We want to have a long-term financial plan. We don't want to neglect planning. We want to make sure that it's part of it. And number 5, we want to make sure that we build a support team that can help us. You want to have your financial advisor, your estate attorney, your CPA, and supportive friends and family around you. While widowhood is a painful transition, it's also an opportunity to rebuild on your terms and not those of anybody else. You want to do what's best for you. If you're a widow navigating these challenges, know that you don't have to figure it out alone. I help women create clarity and confidence in their financial lives so they can move forward with a peace of mind. You can use the calendar link below if you'd like to talk. I also invite you to subscribe for more guidance.